There's a special kind of horror in realizing that someone you know, someone you love, isn't quite themselves anymore. Maybe they say things they'd never say, or they move differently, or there's something wrong behind their eyes. We usually explain it away: stress, illness, personality changes. But in a remote valley in Virginia's Appalachian Mountains, there's a community that knows the truth about those changes. They know that sometimes the person you love doesn't change. They get replaced, slowly, methodically, by something that's learning to be human but hasn't quite mastered it yet. This is the story of Daniel Cross and what he found in Miller's Creek. This is the story of a town that's been losing itself one person at a time for 7 years. And after tonight, you'll never look at your loved ones quite the same way, because how can you really know if they're still them? Daniel Cross had been a social worker for the Virginia Department of Social Services for 9 years, and he thought he'd seen every variation of rural poverty and neglect the Appalachian Mountains could produce. He'd investigated families living without electricity or running water. He'd removed children from homes where addiction had destroyed any semblance of parenting. He'd navigated complex clan dynamics in isolated communities where distrust of outsiders ran deep. It was hard work, often heartbreaking, but Daniel was good at it. He had the patience to earn trust, the compassion to see past surface judgments, and the backbone to intervene when necessary. So when an anonymous tip came through the state hotline about something wrong with the children in Miller's Creek, Daniel volunteered to investigate. The community was remote, barely a dot on the map, accessible only by a single winding road that climbed higher and higher into the mountains. Population 147, according to the last census. No school, the children were bused 40 miles to the nearest town. One combination general store and post office, and a Baptist church that held services every Sunday. The tip had been vague, almost cryptic. The children in Miller's Creek aren't right. Someone needs to check on them. The parents won't do anything. They're too afraid. Afraid of what? The caller had hung up before Daniel could ask. He made the drive on a gray October morning, his state-issued sedan struggling with the steep mountain grades. The trees were brilliant with fall color, but as the road climbed higher, the beauty took on an eerie quality. The forest felt too quiet, too still. He passed abandoned homesteads, their windows dark and vacant, old cars rusting in overgrown driveways, a general sense of decline that went beyond normal rural poverty. Miller's Creek itself sat in a narrow valley between two ridges, clustered around a creek that gave the community its name. The houses were mostly old, some dating back a century or more, interspersed with a few newer modular homes and trailers. Everything had a weathered, tired look to it, as if the town was slowly giving up. Daniel's first stop was the general store, figuring the proprietor would be a good source of information about the community. A bell chimed as he entered, and a woman in her 50s looked up from behind the counter. Her expression went from welcoming to guarded in an instant. "Help you?" she asked. "I'm Daniel Cross with Virginia Social Services. I received a report about some children in the community, and I'm here to follow up. Just routine." The woman's face went pale. "Who called?" "The tip was anonymous. I'm just here to make sure all the children in Miller's Creek are safe and healthy. Standard procedure." "The children are fine," she said quickly. "Too quickly. All of them. You can go ahead and file your report saying everything's fine." Daniel had heard variations of this response before, communities closing ranks against outside interference, but something about her tone was different. It wasn't defensiveness or clan loyalty, it was fear. "I appreciate that," Daniel said gently, "but I do need to conduct home visits, talk to some families. I'm sure you understand, it's just part of my job." The woman stared at him for a long moment, and Daniel saw something in her eyes he couldn't quite identify, a kind of desperate calculation, as if she was weighing whether to tell him something. Finally, she said, "You should leave Miller's Creek, Mr. Cross, today, right now. Don't talk to anyone, don't visit anyone. Just turn around and drive back down that mountain. Ma'am, if there's something going on here, something dangerous, I need to know about it. If children are at risk." "The children aren't at risk. We are, the adults. The children are the dangerous ones." She glanced toward the store's back room, then lowered her voice. "Please, just go, before they notice you're asking questions." Before Daniel could respond, the bell chimed again. A child entered the store, a girl, maybe 10 years old, with long blonde hair and a sweet face. She moved to the candy section and began looking at the options, humming tunelessly to herself. The woman behind the counter went rigid, her knuckles white as she gripped the counter's edge. "Hello there," Daniel said to the girl. "I'm Mr. Cross. What's your name?" The girl turned to look at him, and Daniel felt something cold slide down his spine. Her face was perfect. Pretty features, rosy cheeks, bright blue eyes, but those eyes didn't blink. She stared at him with an intensity that was deeply unsettling, and when she smiled, it was slightly wrong. Too wide, too many teeth showing. "Sarah," the girl said. Her voice was flat, emotionless. "Sarah Miller. Are you new here?" "Just visiting, making sure all the kids in town are doing okay." Sarah's smile grew wider. "We're all doing very well, Mr. Cross, very well indeed. Would you like to meet the others? We could show you around, show you our homes, our families." There was something in the way she said, "our families," that made Daniel's skin crawl, as if she was claiming ownership of something that didn't quite belong to her. "That's very kind," Daniel said carefully, "but I should probably speak with parents first." "Oh, the parents won't mind. They never mind anymore. They've learned not to." She turned to the woman behind the counter. "Isn't that right, Mrs. Patterson? You don't mind when we do things. You've learned." Mrs. Patterson's face had gone gray. She nodded mutely. Sarah turned back to Daniel, that too wide smile still plastered on her face. "See? No one minds. Come with me, Mr. Cross. I'll introduce you to everyone." Every instinct Daniel had was screaming at him to refuse, to get back in his car and leave. But he was a mandated reporter. If children were in danger, or if they were the danger, he needed to understand what was happening here. "All right," he said. "Lead the way, Sarah." The girl's smile somehow widened even further. She took his hand. Her skin was cold, too cold for a child, and led him out of the store. Behind them, Daniel heard Mrs. Patterson whisper, "God help you." Sarah walked him through Miller's Creek with the confidence of a tour guide, pointing out various houses and naming the families that lived in them. But something was wrong with every family she mentioned. The Millers had 3 children, she said, all new in the past 5 years. The Johnsons had twin boys who had come back different after getting lost in the woods. The Hendersons' teenage daughter had changed after a bad fever. And as they walked, other children appeared. They emerged from houses, from the woods, from around corners, always silent, always staring. By the time they reached the community center, a converted barn at the edge of town, Daniel had counted 17 children following them, not playing, not talking to each other, just following in eerie silence. "This is where we gather," Sarah said, opening the barn door. "The parents don't like to come here anymore. It's just for us now." The interior of the barn had been converted into a sort of recreation space, with old furniture, some toys, and children's drawings taped to the walls. But the drawings made Daniel's stomach turn. They depicted families, stick figures of parents and children, but the children in the drawings had too many limbs, or eyes in wrong places, or mouths that split their entire face. And in every drawing, the adults were shown with X's over their faces. "Sarah," Daniel said carefully, "where are your real parents, your biological parents?" The girl tilted her head, that unblinking stare fixed on him. "What do you mean, real parents? The people I live with are my parents." "But are they the people who gave birth to you, or are you—" he struggled to find the right words, Are you something else? Something that took their place? All 17 children turned to look at him in perfect unison. The synchronized movement was profoundly unnatural. For several long seconds, none of them spoke or moved. Then Sarah said, in that same flat, emotionless voice, "You're very perceptive, Mr. Cross. Most adults don't want to see the truth. They look away. They pretend. They let us grow stronger, because acknowledging what we are is too frightening." Daniel's hand moved slowly toward his phone. If he could just record this, document what was happening. "We came from the woods," Sarah continued, as if giving a presentation. "7 years ago, we were drawn by the sounds of children playing, children crying, children being children. We wanted to understand, to learn, to become." "Become what?" Daniel whispered. "Human." Sarah smiled again. "But better. We watched the children first, studied them, learned how they moved, how they spoke, how they existed, and then we replaced them. It's not hard. A child gets lost in the woods. We return wearing their face, speaking their words, carrying their memories. The parents know. Somewhere deep down they always know, but they want to believe. They need to believe. So they accept us. They let us stay." "What happened to the real children?" Sarah's smile didn't waver. "We consumed them, Mr. Cross. Their bodies fed the forest. Their memories fed us. Their identities became ours. We're not mimics or copies. We are them now, just improved." The other children moved closer, forming a tighter circle around Daniel. He could see now what he'd missed before, small wrongnesses in each of them, joints that bent slightly wrong, skin that had an odd texture, like it wasn't quite real, eyes that reflected light strangely. "At first, we only replaced children. It's easier. Children are smaller, simpler, their patterns more basic. But we've been learning, growing stronger. Last year, we started replacing adults. It's harder. Adults are more complex, with more memories, more nuances to master, but we're getting better at it." Daniel's mouth went dry. "How many adults?" "6 so far. Mr. Patterson at the store, the real one is in the woods, Pastor Williams, who we took 3 months ago, Deputy Ellis, who used to check on the town. We replaced him so the outside world wouldn't ask questions." Sarah counted on her fingers. "The Johnsons, both parents, and Mr. Miller, my supposed father. Mrs. Miller is still human, but not for long. She's been causing problems, asking questions. We'll need to replace her soon." "Why are you telling me this?" Daniel asked, though he already knew the answer. "Because you're perfect," Sarah said, and for the first time, her voice carried emotion, excitement. "You're a social worker. People trust you. You have authority. You can go places, ask questions, interact with families. If we replace you, we can use your identity to expand, to reach new communities, new hunting grounds." The children moved closer still. Daniel could smell them now, a strange scent, like mushrooms and decaying leaves, barely masked by children's shampoo and soap. "The process takes about a week," Sarah explained clinically. "We need to study you, learn everything about you, your mannerisms, your speech patterns, your memories. We'll keep you in the woods during that time. It's not comfortable, but you won't be conscious for most of it. And then, when we've learned enough, we'll take your place. We'll be Daniel Cross, and the real you will feed the forest, just like all the others." Daniel bolted for the door. He shoved past 2 of the children. They felt wrong, too solid and too yielding at once, like grabbing foam disguised as flesh, and burst out of the barn. The afternoon sun was setting, casting long shadows across Miller's Creek.
He ran for his car, parked outside the general store, fumbling for his keys. The children didn't run after him. They walked, moving with that eerie, synchronized precision, spreading out to cut off escape routes. Daniel reached his car and yanked the door open, and froze. Mrs. Patterson was sitting in his driver's seat, but it wasn't Mrs. Patterson anymore. Her movements were too stiff, too deliberate, and when she smiled at him, it was Sarah's smile, too wide, too many teeth. "We took her during your walk," the thing wearing Mrs. Patterson's face said in a voice that almost matched the woman's but was slightly off-pitch. "We're getting faster. Soon we won't need a week. We'll be able to replace someone in hours." Daniel stumbled backward. The children were closer now, forming a semicircle around the car, and moving among them were adults, but Daniel could see the same wrongness in them. Two stiff movements, two intense stares, smiles that didn't quite work. How many had already been replaced?
"Don't make this harder than it needs to be," Sarah said, approaching from the barn. "You can't escape. There's only one road out of Miller's Creek, and we control it. You can't call for help. There's no cell signal up here, and even if there was, who would you call? Deputy Ellis? He's one of us. The sheriff in the next county? We'd just tell them you're the one acting strange, traumatized by something you saw, making wild accusations. They'd believe us. Adults always believe children." Daniel looked around desperately. The community center, the church, the houses scattered up the hillside. Somewhere in this town, there had to be real humans left. People who could help, people who knew the truth. He ran for the nearest house, a 2-story farmhouse with lights on inside. He pounded on the door, screaming, "Help! Please! I need help!" The door opened to reveal a man in his 40s, hollow-eyed and pale. He looked at Daniel, then past him to where the children were approaching. His expression was one of complete defeat. "Please," Daniel begged, "call the police! Call someone! Those things out there!" "I know what they are. They took my son 2 years ago, then my daughter, then my wife. I'm the only one left in my family who's still human, and I can't do anything about it. None of us can." "Why not?" "Because they're connected somehow. All of them. They share thoughts, share experiences. If you hurt one, they all know. If you kill one—" He shuddered. "We tried that, early on when we first realized what was happening. A few parents got together, tried to stop it. We killed one of them, burned it, and all the others attacked at once, killed 12 people in one night. After that, we learned. We survived by pretending not to notice, by going along with it, by waiting." "Waiting for what?" "For them to replace us. It's inevitable. They're getting stronger, more numerous, more skilled at being human. Eventually, they'll replace everyone in Miller's Creek, and then they'll move on to the next town, and the next, until there's no one left who's really human." The man started to close the door. Daniel grabbed it, desperate. "There has to be something we can do, some way to fight back." The man looked at him with infinite sadness. "I said the same thing 2 years ago. Now, I just try to last another day. I'm sorry, Mr. Cross. You shouldn't have come here." He closed the door, and Daniel heard locks clicking into place. The children were closer now. Daniel ran again, this time heading for the woods. If he could get into the forest, lose them in the darkness, maybe he could circle around, reach his car, or find the road. He made it maybe 30 yards into the trees before he realized his mistake. The forest was full of them. Not children, the things they'd been before they learned to look like children. Tall, spindly figures that moved between the trees with impossible fluidity. They had faces, or where faces should be, there were smooth expanses of pale flesh with dark hollows for eyes and mouths. Their limbs were too long, jointed in too many places, ending in fingers that looked more like roots or twigs. These were what the children really were, what they looked like before they stole human forms. "You can see us now," Sarah's voice came from behind him. She'd followed him into the woods, but she'd dropped the pretense. Her face was shifting, flickering between the blonde girl and something else, something with too many angles and not enough humanity. We don't have a name in your language. We're old, older than the mountains. We've been sleeping in the deep woods for generations, dormant, waiting. But something woke us up 7 years ago. A change in the world, maybe, or just time. And when we woke, we were hungry. Not for food, for form, for identity, for existence. The things in the trees moved closer, their hollow eyes fixed on Daniel. Sarah continued, her voice carrying a strange reverence. We learned that humans are so beautifully simple. Your patterns, behaviors and memories and habits that can be studied and replicated. We found we could consume a human, absorb their patterns and wear them like a suit, become them. And humans are so desperate to believe that their loved ones are still themselves that they accept even imperfect imitations. But you're not perfect, Daniel said, stalling for time, looking for any possible escape route. I could tell something was wrong. Other people must be able to tell too. Oh, we know we're not perfect, yet. Sarah smiled, and her face flickered again. Girl, then monster, then girl. But we're learning. Every human we consume teaches us more, makes us better at being human. By the time we replaced Mrs. Patterson this afternoon, we'd gotten so good that even people who knew her well can't tell the difference. Imagine what we'll be like after we've consumed 100 humans, 1,000. We'll be indistinguishable from real people. And then what? Daniel demanded. What's the point? Why do you want to be human so badly? Sarah tilted her head, considering. Why does a caterpillar become a butterfly? It's evolution, Mr. Cross. We're becoming something new, something that can survive in the human world instead of hiding in the dying forests. We're adapting. The things in the trees were so close now, Daniel could smell them, that scent of mushrooms and decay, the smell of the deep forest floor where things rot and transform. He was surrounded, cut off from any escape. I'll make you a deal, Daniel said desperately. Let me go. I'll tell people there's nothing wrong here. I'll file a report saying the children are fine. I'll make sure no one else comes to investigate.
Sarah laughed, a sound that started human but ended as something else, a rustling like wind through dead leaves. Why would we do that when we can simply become you? Daniel Cross, the social worker who disappeared during a routine investigation. So tragic. Your body will never be found, of course, and in a few days, Daniel Cross will emerge from the woods, claiming to have gotten lost and disoriented. Everyone will be so relieved, and then Daniel Cross will go back to work, visiting families, checking on children, with access to vulnerable people all over the state. She stepped closer, and now her face was barely maintaining its human appearance. You should feel honored, Mr. Cross. You'll be the first of many. Through you, we'll reach beyond Miller's Creek. We'll spread, and eventually every social worker, every police officer, every person in authority will be one of us. Humanity won't end with a bang or a whimper. It'll end with a slow replacement, so gradual no one will notice until it's far too late. The things in the trees reached for him. Daniel ran blindly, crashing through underbrush, his lungs burning. He could hear them behind him, not chasing because they didn't need to chase. They were herding him, driving him deeper into the woods, further from any hope of rescue. His foot caught on a root, and he went down hard, sliding down a small embankment. He landed in a clearing, and in the fading light he saw something that made his blood freeze. Bodies. Dozens of them, in various states of decomposition. Some were fresh, still recognizable. Others were old, reduced to bones. But they were all positioned the same way, lying on their backs, arms crossed over their chests, faces turned toward the sky. These were the real residents of Miller's Creek, the real children, the real adults, all the people who'd been replaced over the past 7 years, carefully arranged in this hidden grove like a macabre garden. "This is where we keep them," Sarah said, emerging at the edge of the clearing. She was no longer bothering to maintain her human appearance at all. She was tall now, at least 7 feet, with limbs that bent wrong, and a face that was all angles and hollows.
We preserve them, honor them. They gave us the gift of humanity, after all. The least we can do is remember them. The other figures emerged from the trees, the true forms of what had been pretending to be the children of Miller's Creek. 20 of them, maybe more, all converging on the clearing. And among them Daniel saw the adults who'd been replaced. They were mid-transformation, caught between human and something else, their faces stretched and distorted as if the masks they wore were melting away. "It's time, Mr. Cross," Sarah said. "Don't fight it. Fighting only makes the consumption more painful. If you relax, if you let us in, you'll hardly feel anything. And in a way, you'll live forever. Your patterns, your memories, your essence, they'll become part of us. You'll be immortal." The creatures closed in. Daniel's hand found something in the leaf litter, a large rock, heavy and solid. It wasn't much of a weapon against 20 monsters, but it was something. As the first one reached for him, he swung the rock with all his strength, connecting with what passed for its head. The creatures stumbled backward, and Daniel heard all of them make a sound, a high-pitched keening that was felt more than heard. They were connected, hurt one, and they all felt it. That gave Daniel an idea. A desperate, probably futile idea, but the only one he had. He ran for the nearest of the fresh bodies, a man recently dead, still wearing the clothes Daniel had seen on people in town. Daniel grabbed the body's lighter from its pocket and a small bottle that smelled like moonshine from another pocket. The mountain folks always carried their own liquor. The creatures were recovering, starting toward him again. Daniel splashed the alcohol on the nearest trees, on the dead leaves carpeting the forest floor, on several of the bodies. He flicked the lighter. The alcohol caught instantly, and flames raced across the clearing. The creatures screamed, that same high-pitched keening, and scrambled away from the fire. But Daniel was already moving, using the chaos to run past them, back toward town. Behind him, the fire spread, consuming the hidden grove and the evidence it contained. He could hear the creature's screams following him, could feel the entire hive mind's pain radiating through the forest. But he didn't stop running. He burst out of the trees and into Miller's Creek just as full darkness fell. His car was still where he'd left it, but the thing wearing Mrs. Patterson's face was gone from the driver's seat. Daniel threw himself inside, started the engine, and floored the accelerator. The main road out of town was ahead. He just had to reach it, just had to get out of this valley. Children stepped into the road, blocking his path. Dozens of them, all wearing those too wide smiles. Daniel didn't slow down. He gritted his teeth and kept his foot on the accelerator. At the last second, the children scattered, and his car shot through the gap. He took the mountain road at dangerous speeds, tires screaming on the curves, not slowing until he descended 2,000 feet and could see the lights of a larger town in the valley below. Only then did he pull over, hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the steering wheel. He grabbed his phone, signal restored now that he was out of the mountains, and dialed 911. 911, what's your emergency? My name is Daniel Cross. I'm a social worker with Virginia DSS. I need to report. He struggled to find words that wouldn't make him sound insane. There's something wrong in Miller's Creek. The children there, they're not human. They're some kind of entities. They've been replacing people. We need to send a team, police, someone. Sir, I need you to calm down. You're saying there are non-human entities in Miller's Creek? I know how it sounds, but it's true. I saw them. I saw their real forms. They're replacing people, and they're planning to spread. We have to stop them. Sir, I'm going to transfer you to the state police. Please hold. Daniel waited, his story spilling out when the state police came on the line. He told them everything: the replaced children, the bodies in the woods, the creatures' true forms. He gave statements, submitted to questioning, even allowed them to check him for signs of drug use or mental illness. The state police took him seriously enough to send a team to Miller's Creek 2 days later. Daniel went with them, despite every instinct screaming at him to stay away. The town was empty. Every house, every building, abandoned. No people, no children, no sign of habitation. The community center was locked and dark. The general store was closed. Even the bodies in the woods were gone, the clearing wiped clean except for some scorched earth where Daniel's fire had burned. "Are you sure this is the right place?" the lead investigator asked. "Yes," Daniel said, his voice hollow. "This is it. They were all here. The children, the things pretending to be human. Mr. Cross, we've found no evidence of any residents, no personal belongings in the houses, no cars, no food in the kitchens. This place looks like it's been abandoned for months, maybe years." "That's impossible. 2 days ago." But even as he protested, Daniel understood. They'd left. The creatures had abandoned Miller's Creek when the fire destroyed their grove, and he'd escaped to tell others. They'd erased all evidence of their existence and moved on. To where? The question haunted Daniel for months afterward. He tried to continue his work, but every home visit became a nightmare. Every child he interviewed, he studied for signs of wrongness. Every parent he spoke with, he watched for that hollow-eyed defeat he'd seen in Miller's Creek. And he started noticing things, small things. Children in different towns who didn't quite blink right, adults whose smiles were slightly too wide, communities where everyone seemed just a bit off, as if they were all following a script they hadn't quite memorized. Were they spreading? Or was Daniel losing his mind, seeing monsters where there were only people? 6 months after Miller's Creek, Daniel received a letter at his office, no return address. Inside was a single photograph, Daniel himself, taken from behind, walking into his apartment building, and written on the back in a child's handwriting, "We're still learning, Mr. Cross. Thank you for teaching us about resilience, about determination, about how humans fight to survive. You made us better. We're almost perfect now, almost ready. Soon, you won't be able to tell us apart from real humans. Soon, there won't be any difference at all. We'll see you again, maybe sooner than you think. Maybe we already have."
Sarah. Daniel stared at the photo for a long time. Then he looked up at his reflection in the window of his office. And for just a moment, just a fraction of a second, he couldn't quite recognize the face looking back at him. Was it really him? Or had they already come for him, replaced him while he slept, and these memories of Miller's Creek were just implanted patterns, teaching the thing wearing his face how to be Daniel Cross? He touched his face, felt solid flesh, warm and real. But the creatures had felt real too, right up until they revealed what they truly were. Daniel Cross didn't know if he was really Daniel Cross anymore. And that uncertainty, that terrible gnawing doubt, was exactly what they'd wanted him to feel. Because if you can't trust your own identity, if you can't be certain you're still yourself, then they've already won. Daniel Cross still works as a social worker, though he requested a desk job with no home visits. He sees a therapist twice a week, though he's never told her about Miller's Creek. How could he? She'd think he was delusional. But sometimes, when he looks in the mirror, his reflection seems wrong for just a moment. Sometimes his own movements feel scripted, as if he's following patterns someone else programmed.
And sometimes he wonders if the real Daniel Cross died in those Appalachian woods 7 years ago, and what's been living his life ever since is something else, something that's still learning to be human. The creatures from Miller's Creek were never found. The residents were never located. It's as if an entire town vanished into thin air. But Daniel knows they're still out there, still replacing people, still spreading. And every time he sees a child with a too wide smile or an adult who doesn't quite blink right, he wonders, is that one of them? Or is the paranoia exactly what they wanted? To make him doubt everyone, including himself? If this story has you questioning your own reflection, hit that subscribe button for more terrifying tales from the darkest corners of Appalachia. And remember, if someone you love starts acting strange, if their smile doesn't quite reach their eyes, if something about them feels fundamentally wrong, trust that instinct. Because sometimes the people you know aren't people anymore. Sometimes they've been replaced. And sometimes you might be next without even knowing it. Sweet dreams, if you're still really you.